The crisp October morning in Denver carried the scent of fallen leaves and the promise of snow in the distant mountains. Maya Rodriguez stood at the entrance of Lincoln High School, her white cane tapping rhythm ally against the concrete steps as she listened to the symphony of teenage voices, slamming lockers, and squeaking sneakers that filled the hallway beyond the double doors. "Are you sure about this, Mija?" her mother, Carmen, asked for the third time that morning, her voice tight with worry. "The School for the Blind has excellent programs, and you'd be with students who understand." "Mom," Maya interrupted gently, adjusting her backpack straps with practiced ease. "We've talked about this. I want to try regular high school. I need to know I can do this." She turned her face toward where she knew her mother stood, her clouded brown eyes reflecting a determination that had grown stronger with each obstacle she'd overcome in her 16 years. Carmen Rodriguez watched her daughter's face, seeing the same stubborn set of jaw that had appeared when Maya was 3 and insisted on learning to ride a bike, when she was 8 and demanded to join the school choir, when she was 12 and refused to let her progressive vision loss stop her from playing piano. The condition had taken Maya's sight gradually, but it had never dimmed her spirit. "I'll be fine," Maya said, reaching out to squeeze her mother's hand. "Mrs. Patterson, my orientation and mobility instructor, walked me through the layout 3 times. I know where everything is." The warning bell echoed across the courtyard, and Maya felt the familiar flutter of nerves in her stomach. This was it, her chance to prove that she belonged here, that she could succeed alongside her sighted peers. "Okay, but you call me if you need anything," Carmen said, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Anything at all." Maya nodded and began her careful ascent up the steps, her cane detecting each rise before her foot found its place. The sounds grew louder as she approached the entrance. Laughter, conversations, the rustle of papers, and underneath it all, the electric buzz of fluorescent lights that most people never noticed but that Maya's heightened senses picked up immediately. The hallways smelled like floor wax, teenage body spray, and something faintly cafeteria-like that seemed to permeate all schools. Maya paused just inside the doorway, orienting herself to the layout she'd memorized. Main office to her left, cafeteria straight ahead, stairwell to the second floor on her right. "Excuse me," a voice said nearby, and Maya turned toward it. "Are you Maya, the new student?" "Yes," Maya replied, grateful for the friendly tone. "You must be Jessica, my student guide." "That's me," Jessica Chen said warmly. She was a junior with kind eyes and an easy smile, chosen by the counseling department specifically for her patience and genuine desire to help. "Ready for the grand tour? We've got about 15 minutes before first period." As they walked through the hallways, Jessica provided a running commentary of landmarks and locations, while Maya committed each detail to memory. The journey to her locker went smoothly. She'd practiced the combination dozens of times, but she could feel the curious stares and hear the whispered conversations that followed in their wake. "Is that the blind girl? How is she supposed to take notes? I heard she has a seeing eye dog." "No, that's just a cane." Maya kept her expression neutral, used to being the subject of such speculation. She'd learned long ago that most people meant no harm, they were simply curious about something unfamiliar to them. Her first class was American literature with Mr. Davidson, a teacher known for his engaging discussions and challenging assignments. Maya had read ahead in her Braille textbooks, determined to be prepared for whatever the class might bring. The classroom buzzed with the usual pre-class chatter as students settled into their seats. Maya found her assigned desk in the 3rd row, carefully placing her bag beside her chair and arranging her Braille materials on the desktop. "Good morning, class," Mr. Davidson began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who genuinely loved teaching. "Today we're starting our unit on American courage in literature. We'll be examining how different authors have portrayed bravery, heroism, and the human spirit in the face of adversity." Maya felt a small smile tug at the corners of her mouth. This was exactly the kind of discussion she loved, one where she could contribute meaningfully based on her reading and thinking, not just her ability to see visual aids. "Now, I know we have a new student joining us today," Mr. Davidson continued, and Maya felt her cheeks warm as attention shifted toward her. "Maya Rodriguez comes to us with excellent recommendations from her previous school. Maya, would you like to introduce yourself to the class?" This was the moment Maya had both dreaded and anticipated. She stood slowly, her hands finding the edge of her desk for reference, and turned to face the general direction of her classmates. "Hi everyone," she began, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. "I'm Maya Rodriguez. I just moved here from Phoenix with my mom. I love reading, playing piano, and I'm really excited to be part of this class discussion about American literature. The silence that followed felt heavier than usual, and Maya could sense the weight of 25 pairs of eyes studying her, processing her blindness, forming their first impressions. "Thank you, Maya," Mr. Davidson said warmly, breaking the quiet. "I think you'll find our discussions quite lively here. Now, let's dive into our first text." As the class progressed, Maya found herself relaxing into the familiar rhythm of literary analysis. When Mr. Davidson asked about the theme of courage in The Red Badge of Courage, Maya raised her hand confidently. "Maya," Mr. Davidson called on her. "I think Crane is showing us that real courage isn't the absence of fear," Maya said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "It's about acting despite that fear. Henry Fleming doesn't become brave by not being scared. He becomes brave by continuing to fight even when he's terrified." "Excellent observation," Mr. Davidson replied, and Maya could hear the genuine appreciation in his voice. "That's a very mature understanding of the text." Behind her, Maya heard a quiet snicker and a whispered comment she couldn't quite make out, but the tone made her shoulders tense slightly. She pushed the feeling aside, focusing instead on the discussion that continued around her. The bell rang, signaling the end of first period, and students began gathering their belongings with the usual shuffle and chatter. Maya carefully placed her Braille books in her bag and stood, reaching for her cane. "Hey, Maya," Jessica appeared at her side. "How was your first class?" "Really good," Maya replied honestly. "Mr. Davidson seems like a great teacher." As they walked toward Maya's second period class, Jessica chatted about the various teachers and classes, providing the kind of insider information that would help Maya navigate not just the physical layout of the school, but its social dynamics as well. "Chemistry with Mrs. Foster is next," Jessica explained. "She's pretty strict about lab safety, but she's fair. And she always makes sure everyone understands the material before moving on." The chemistry classroom had a different feel, more sterile, with the faint smell of various chemicals and the sound of Bunsen burners being tested. Maya found her assigned lab table and was pleased to discover that her lab partner was Alex Thompson, a quiet but friendly junior who immediately offered to help her navigate the equipment. "I've never worked with someone who's blind before," Alex admitted as they settled in at their lab table. "What's the best way for me to help without, being weird about it?" Maya appreciated his directness. "Just describe what you're doing as you do it," she said. "And if I need to handle something, just tell me where it is and let me explore it with my hands. I learn through touch the same way you learn through sight." Mrs. Foster began the class with a demonstration of proper lab procedures, and Maya listened intently, building a mental map of the classroom layout and equipment locations. When it came time for their first experiment, testing the pH of various household substances, Alex proved to be an excellent partner, describing each step clearly while allowing Maya to actively participate. "Okay, so I'm placing the litmus paper in the lemon juice solution," Alex narrated. "And it's turning really red. What does that mean again?" "Red means acidic," Maya replied, making a note in Braille on her lab sheet. "Lemon juice should be around 2 on the pH scale." "Perfect," Alex said, and Maya could hear the smile in his voice. "This is actually really cool. You're like a walking chemistry textbook." The class proceeded smoothly, with Maya and Alex working through each test methodically. Maya felt a growing sense of confidence as she realized that her preparation and study habits were serving her well in this new environment. But as the bell rang and students began cleaning up their lab stations, Maya overheard a conversation from the table behind her that made her stomach clench. "Did you see how she just grabbed that beaker?" one voice said, not quite quietly enough. "What if she had spilled acid everywhere?" "I know, right?" another voice replied. "It's like, why is she even in regular classes? Isn't this dangerous for everyone?" Maya's hands stilled on her lab materials. She'd heard comments like this before, but somehow they stung more here, in this new place where she'd hoped for a fresh start. Alex noticed her change in demeanor immediately. "Hey," he said quietly, "don't listen to them. You did great today. Better than most people, actually." Maya managed a small smile, grateful for his kindness. "Thanks, Alex. I appreciate that." As they left the chemistry lab, Maya realized that her first day was going to be more challenging than she'd hoped. But as she made her way through the hallways, Listening to the familiar sounds of a school day in progress, she reminded herself of why she was here. She wasn't just trying to prove that she could succeed in regular classes. She was trying to prove, to herself and to others, that blindness didn't have to mean limitations. That courage wasn't about seeing clearly, but about moving forward despite the darkness. The real test, Maya sensed, was still to come. The next few weeks settled into a routine that Maya found both comforting and challenging. She'd learned to navigate the hallways during passing periods, memorized the locations of all her classes, and developed a system for organizing her materials that worked efficiently in the fast-paced environment of high school. Her academic performance was strong. She consistently participated in class discussions, turned in well-researched assignments, and had even earned praise from several teachers for her thoughtful analysis and unique perspectives. Alex had become a genuine friend, and Jessica continued to check in on her regularly, though Maya increasingly found she could navigate the school independently. But the social landscape remained treacherous territory. The whispers and stares had continued, and Maya had begun to identify the sources of most of the negative comments. A group of students led by Brittany Walsh, a popular junior with a sharp tongue and a following of equally cutting friends, seemed to take particular pleasure in making Maya feel unwelcome. It started small, comments just loud enough for Maya to hear as she passed by, deliberate bumping in the hallways that could be dismissed as accidental, the kind of social cruelty that was hard to prove but impossible to ignore. Maya had dealt with bullying before, but this felt different. More personal. More designed to make her question her decision to attend mainstream school. The breaking point came on a Thursday in November, during her advanced placement English class. The assignment was a group presentation on themes of heroism in American literature, and Maya had been paired with 3 other students: Kevin Martinez, a thoughtful athlete; Sarah Kim, a quiet but brilliant student; and unfortunately, Brittany Walsh. Maya had hoped that working together on an academic project might help break down some of the barriers, but Brittany had made it clear from the first planning meeting that she viewed Maya's blindness as an obstacle to their group's success. "Look," Brittany had said during their initial meeting, her voice carrying the kind of artificial sweetness that barely concealed disdain. "No offense, but this is AP English. We're competing for grades that matter for college. Maybe you should just, do the research and let us handle the actual presentation." Maya had felt her jaw tighten, but she'd kept her voice level. "I'm perfectly capable of presenting. I've done presentations before. But how will you know where to look?" Brittany pressed. "How will you use the visual aids? How will you connect with the audience?" Kevin had jumped in at that point, suggesting they focus on their topic rather than logistics, and the meeting had moved forward. But Maya could sense Brittany's resentment simmering beneath the surface of their interactions. Now, on presentation day, that resentment was about to boil over. The classroom buzzed with nervous energy as groups prepared to present their analyses. Maya sat at her desk, her portion of the presentation notes organized in Braille, her heart beating steadily as she mentally rehearsed her part. Their group had chosen to analyze the concept of moral courage in To Kill a Mockingbird, The Things They Carried, and Speak, texts that explored different facets of bravery in the face of social pressure and personal fear. Maya's contribution focused on how each author depicted the moment when characters chose to act despite knowing the personal cost. She'd spent hours crafting her analysis, drawing connections between the texts that she was excited to share with the class. Next up, we have Kevin, Sarah, Maya, and Brittany presenting on moral courage, Ms. Rodriguez announced. Maya felt a flutter of irony that her English teacher shared her last name, though they weren't related. The group moved to the front of the classroom, and Maya carefully made her way to the presentation area, using her memorized knowledge of the room's layout. She could feel the attention of her classmates focusing on her, could sense their curiosity about how she would handle this public speaking challenge. Kevin began with the introduction, his voice steady and confident as he outlined their thesis. Sarah followed with her analysis of Scout Finch's moral development, her normally quiet voice growing stronger as she warmed to her topic. Then it was Maya's turn. She stepped forward slightly, her hands finding the edge of the teacher's desk for orientation, and began to speak. "The connection between all 3 of these works," Maya said, her voice clear and confident, "is that moral courage requires characters to act not just despite external obstacles, but despite their own internal fears. Atticus Finch knows he'll face social ostracism for defending Tom Robinson. Tim O'Brien knows that telling the truth about war will make people uncomfortable. Melinda knows that speaking up about her assault will bring scrutiny and disbelief." Maya could feel the classroom's attention, could sense that her classmates were genuinely listening to her analysis. She continued, her passion for the literature evident in her voice. But what makes these characters truly brave isn't that they overcome their fears, it's that they act while still feeling those fears. They choose to do what's right even when they can't see a clear path forward, even when they don't know how things will turn out. As Maya spoke, she felt herself gaining confidence, finding her rhythm. This was what she loved about literature, the way it revealed universal truths about human nature, the way it connected across time and experience. Moral courage, Maya concluded, isn't about having perfect vision of the future. It's about having the strength to take the next right step, even when you can't see where it leads. The classroom was quiet for a moment, and Maya could sense that her analysis had resonated. Then she heard the beginning of applause, scattered at first but growing stronger. It was Brittany's turn to present the conclusion, but as Maya started to step back to make room, she heard Brittany's voice, sharp and cutting through the supportive atmosphere. "Well," Brittany said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "I guess Maya knows all about not being able to see where things lead." The words hit the classroom like a physical blow. Maya felt her cheeks burn with humiliation as nervous laughter rippled through some of the students. Others sat in stunned silence, clearly uncomfortable with what had just happened. "That's enough," Ms. Rodriguez said firmly, but the damage was already done. Maya stood frozen at the front of the classroom, feeling exposed and vulnerable in a way she hadn't experienced since her early days of adjusting to blindness. The confidence she'd built up over weeks of successful participation crumbled in an instant. "Maya," Ms. Rodriguez said gently, "your analysis was excellent. Truly insightful." But Maya barely heard the teacher's words over the roaring in her ears. She made her way back to her seat with careful, measured steps, her cane tapping against the floor in a rhythm that felt too loud in the suddenly quiet classroom. Brittany finished the presentation with her prepared conclusion, but her words seemed to fall flat after the ugly moment that had preceded them. When the group returned to their seats, Maya could feel the weight of her classmates' stares, some sympathetic, some curious, some uncomfortable. The rest of the class period passed in a blur. Maya sat at her desk, her hands folded carefully in her lap, her mind racing between anger, humiliation, and a growing determination that she couldn't quite name yet. When the bell rang, Maya gathered her materials slowly, wanting to let the rush of students pass before she navigated the hallway. But as she stood to leave, she heard footsteps approaching her desk. "Maya," Ms. Rodriguez said quietly, "I want you to know that what happened today was completely inappropriate. I'm going to be addressing this with the administration." Maya nodded, not trusting her voice to remain steady. "Your presentation was outstanding," the teacher continued. "Your analysis showed real depth and understanding. Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't belong in this classroom." "Thank you," Maya managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. As Maya made her way through the hallways, she could feel the story of what had happened spreading through the school's social networks. She caught fragments of conversations, felt the weight of curious glances, and sensed the mixture of sympathy and uncomfortable fascination that her humiliation had generated. By lunchtime, the incident had taken on a life of its own. Maya sat with Alex and Jessica at their usual table, picking at her sandwich while they filled her in on the reactions they'd observed throughout the day. "Most people are really angry about what Brittany did," Jessica said firmly. "What she said was cruel and completely uncalled for." "Yeah," Alex agreed. Even some of her usual friends were looking uncomfortable. "I think she crossed a line that even they couldn't ignore." Maya appreciated their support, but she could also sense the underlying current of the situation, the way her humiliation had become a piece of school gossip, the way she'd become an object of pity rather than respect. "I just want to forget about it," Maya said quietly. "Move on and focus on my classes." But even as she said the words, Maya knew that forgetting wasn't really an option. The incident had crystallized something that had been building since her first day at Lincoln High, the feeling that she was constantly having to prove her worth, constantly having to justify her presence in spaces where others took their belonging for granted. That afternoon, as Maya sat in her final class of the day, she found herself thinking about her presentation on moral courage. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spoken eloquently about characters who found the strength to act despite their fears, despite not being able to see the path forward clearly. Now she faced her own moment of choice. She could let Brittany's cruelty define her experience at Lincoln High, could retreat into herself and try to make it through the rest of the year with minimal conflict. Or she could find a way to respond that honored the very principles she'd articulated in her presentation. As the final bell of the day rang and students began their exodus from the building, Maya made a decision. She wasn't sure exactly what she was going to do, but she knew that she wasn't going to let fear, or Brittany Walsh, determine her future. The real test of courage, Maya realized, wasn't in analyzing literature. It was in living it. The weekend passed slowly for Maya, filled with supportive phone calls from relatives in Phoenix and long conversations with her mother about the incident. Carmen Rodriguez had been ready to march into the school and demand action, but Maya had asked her to wait. "I need to handle this myself, Mom," Maya had said as they sat in their small kitchen, the smell of fresh coffee mixing with the morning light streaming through the windows. "If I'm going to make it here, I need to find my own way to deal with people like Brittany." Carmen had studied her daughter's face, seeing the same determination that had carried Maya through every challenge her blindness had presented. "What are you thinking, Mija?" Maya had been quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "I'm not sure yet, but I know that hiding isn't the answer." By Monday morning, Maya had crystallized her plan. It was risky, and she wasn't entirely sure it would work, but it felt right in a way that retreat and silence never could. She arrived at school early, before the usual rush of students, and made her way to the main office. Mrs. Patterson, the principal's secretary, greeted her warmly. "Maya, dear, what can I do for you this morning?" "I'd like to request a few minutes at the next school assembly," Maya said, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her stomach. "I have something I'd like to share with the student body." Mrs. Patterson looked surprised but intrigued. "What kind of something?" Maya took a deep breath. "I want to talk to them about courage. About what it really means and why it matters for all of us." The assembly was scheduled for Friday morning, which gave Maya exactly 4 days to prepare. She spent every free moment crafting her speech, refining her message, and working through her nerves about speaking in front of the entire school. The word spread quickly through Lincoln High's social networks. Some students were curious, others were skeptical, and a few, led by Brittany, were openly dismissive. What's she going to do? Cry about her feelings? Maya overheard Brittany saying to her friends during lunch on Wednesday, like, "We get it, you're blind. Do you want a trophy for it?" Maya felt the familiar sting of the words, but she didn't let them derail her preparation. Instead, she used them as fuel for the fire that was building inside her, not a fire of anger, but of purpose. By Thursday evening, Maya's speech was ready. She'd practiced it dozens of times, had refined every transition and polished every example. But as she lay in bed that night, staring up at the ceiling she couldn't see, Maya felt the weight of what she was about to attempt. She wasn't just going to address the student body. She was going to put herself in the most vulnerable position possible, standing alone on a stage, speaking her truth to an audience that included people who had made her feel unwelcome and unwanted. Friday morning arrived gray and cold, with the promise of winter settling over Denver. Maya dressed carefully, choosing a simple blue dress that her mother had helped her pick out, something that looked professional but not pretentious, confident but not aggressive. "You sure about this, Mija?" Carmen asked as they drove to school, her voice tinged with the same worry that had colored their conversations all week. "No," Maya admitted, her honesty surprising them both. "But I think that's the point. Courage isn't about being sure. It's about doing what needs to be done even when you're not sure." The assembly was scheduled for second period, which meant Maya had to endure first period English with the weight of anticipation sitting heavy on her chest. Ms. Rodriguez caught her attention after class. "I heard about your assembly presentation," the teacher said quietly. "I think it's incredibly brave of you to speak up." "Thank you," Maya replied. "I hope it makes a difference." "Maya," Ms. Rodriguez said, her voice gentle but serious, "whatever happens up there, remember that you've already made a difference just by being here, by refusing to let anyone make you smaller than you are." When second period arrived, the gymnasium filled with the chaotic energy of 800 teenagers being corralled into an assembly. Maya waited in the wings with Principal Harrison, listening to the sound of conversations, laughter, and the squeak of bleachers as students settled into their seats. "The microphone is adjusted for your height," Principal Harrison said kindly, "and I'll be right here if you need anything." Maya nodded, her mouth dry with nerves. She could hear the murmur of the crowd, could sense their restless energy, could practically feel their curiosity about what the blind girl was going to say. "Students of Lincoln High," Principal Harrison's voice boomed over the gymnasium sound system, "we have a special presentation today from one of our newest students, Maya Rodriguez." Maya walked onto the stage with careful, measured steps, her cane tapping against the polished wooden floor. The gymnasium fell quieter as she approached the microphone, though she could still hear scattered conversations and the rustle of students shifting in their seats. She reached the microphone and paused, taking a deep breath and feeling the weight of hundreds of pairs of eyes focused on her. This was it, the moment that would define not just her remaining time at Lincoln High, but her understanding of her own strength. 3 weeks ago, Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the gymnasium sound system, I stood in front of my AP English class and talked about moral courage in literature. I talked about characters who found the strength to do what was right even when they couldn't see the path ahead clearly. The gymnasium was growing quieter now, and Maya could sense that she had captured their attention. I talked about how real courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite that fear. It's choosing to take the next right step even when you don't know where it will lead. Maya paused, gathering her thoughts and her courage. What I didn't expect was that I would need to live those words so soon. What I didn't expect was that I would face my own test of courage right here at Lincoln High. She could feel the tension in the room now, could sense that her classmates understood this wasn't going to be a generic motivational speech. When I lost my vision 3 years ago, Maya continued, her voice growing stronger, I thought courage meant learning to navigate the world without sight. I thought it meant memorizing layouts and learning Braille and proving that I could do everything that sighted people could do. Maya's hands found the edges of the podium, grounding herself in the physical sensation of the smooth wood beneath her palms. But I've learned something different here at Lincoln High. I've learned that real courage isn't about proving you're just like everyone else. Real courage is about being authentically yourself, even when that makes other people uncomfortable. A few scattered murmurs rippled through the audience, and Maya could sense that her words were hitting home with some students while making others defensive. Some of you have made it clear that you don't think I belong here, Maya said, her voice carrying a strength that surprised even her. Some of you have whispered about me in hallways, questioned whether I'm safe in chemistry lab, made jokes about my blindness during presentations. The gymnasium was completely quiet now, and Maya could feel the weight of collective attention focused entirely on her words. And I want to thank you for that. The unexpected statement sent a ripple of surprise through the audience. I want to thank you because you've taught me something important about courage. You've taught me that courage isn't about avoiding conflict or making everyone comfortable. Courage is about standing up for what you believe in, even when, especially when, it's difficult. Maya's voice grew more passionate as she found her rhythm. Every day, each of us faces choices about who we want to be. We can choose to be people who build others up or tear them down. We can choose to be people who see differences as weaknesses or as strengths. We can choose to be people who hide from difficult conversations or who engage with them honestly. She paused, letting her words settle over the gymnasium. I came to Lincoln High because I wanted to challenge myself academically. But I've learned that the real education isn't happening in the classroom. It's happening in how we treat each other in the hallways, in how we respond when someone is different from us, in how we choose to use our voices. Maya could sense a shift in the energy of the room, could feel that her message was connecting with more students than she had dared to hope. Blindness has taught me to see things differently, she continued, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. It's taught me to listen more carefully, to pay attention to things that others might miss, to find strength in places I didn't know existed. Maya's voice grew softer but somehow more powerful as she approached her conclusion. But the most important thing blindness has taught me is this: we are all navigating in the dark sometimes. We all face moments when we can't see the path ahead clearly, when we're not sure if we're making the right choices, when we're afraid of what others might think of us. She paused, letting the silence stretch for a moment. The question isn't whether we'll face darkness, we will. The question is what we'll do when we're there. Will we let fear make our decisions for us? Will we let other people's discomfort limit our dreams? Or will we find the courage to keep moving forward, to keep being authentically ourselves, to keep believing that we have something valuable to offer the world? Maya straightened her shoulders, feeling a sense of completion and purpose she had never experienced before. I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me, she said, her voice clear and strong. I don't want your pity. What I want is your respect, the same respect I'm working to give each of you, regardless of whether you've earned it yet." A few scattered chuckles rippled through the audience at her gentle but pointed reference to some of her detractors. "I want us to be a school where differences are celebrated, not just tolerated. Where courage means standing up for each other, not just for ourselves. Where we understand that true strength comes not from tearing others down, but from building each other up." Maya could feel the energy in the gymnasium shifting, could sense that her words had connected with something deeper in her audience. "So here's my challenge to all of us," she concluded, her voice ringing with conviction. "Let's choose courage. Let's choose kindness. Let's choose to see each other's differences as gifts rather than obstacles. Let's choose to be the kind of people who make Lincoln High a place where everyone can succeed." Maya stepped back from the microphone, and for a moment, the gymnasium was completely silent. Then, slowly, applause began, tentative at first, then growing stronger and more widespread until it filled the entire space. As Maya made her way off the stage, she could hear students calling out encouragement, could sense a fundamental shift in the atmosphere that surrounded her. Principal Harrison met her at the side of the stage, his eyes bright with emotion. "Maya," he said quietly, "that was extraordinary. Truly extraordinary." But Maya was listening to something else, the sound of her classmates' voices, no longer filled with curiosity or judgment, but with something that sounded like respect, like recognition, like the beginning of real acceptance. Over the following weeks, the changes at Lincoln High were subtle but unmistakable. Maya found herself included in conversations she had never been part of before. Students she had never spoken to began greeting her in the hallways. Several teachers commented on the improved atmosphere in their classrooms. Even Brittany Walsh, while never apologizing directly, seemed to find ways to avoid the cruel comments that had once punctuated Maya's days. And while Maya didn't expect a dramatic conversion, she appreciated the absence of active hostility. More importantly, Maya noticed changes in herself. She walked through the hallways with a confidence she had never felt before, not the desperate confidence of someone trying to prove themselves, but the quiet confidence of someone who knows their own worth. In AP English, her contributions to class discussions were met with genuine engagement from her classmates. In chemistry lab, Alex had been joined by several other students who were curious about her adaptive techniques and eager to learn from her different perspective. And when the semester ended, Maya's grades reflected not just her academic ability, but her growing comfort with being authentically herself in challenging environments. On the last day of school before winter break, Jessica found Maya at her locker, carefully organizing her materials for the vacation. "So," Jessica said with a smile in her voice, "how does it feel to be Lincoln High's most famous student?" Maya laughed, the sound light and genuine. "I never wanted to be famous. I just wanted to belong." "Well," Jessica replied, "mission accomplished. You definitely belong here." As Maya walked out of Lincoln High that afternoon, her cane tapping rhythmically against the polished floors, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She thought about the fear she had felt on her first day, the humiliation of Brittany's cruel comment, the terror of standing in front of 800 students and speaking her truth. But most of all, she thought about the lesson she had learned, that courage wasn't about seeing clearly. It was about moving forward with purpose and authenticity, even when the path ahead was uncertain. Maya Rodriguez had come to Lincoln High to get an education. What she had discovered was something far more valuable: the unshakable knowledge that she had the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead, and the wisdom to understand that true courage was not about being fearless, but about being afraid and choosing to act with integrity anyway. As she stepped out into the crisp December air, Maya smiled. She couldn't see the path ahead, but she knew with absolute certainty that she was ready for whatever it might bring. The girl who had once worried about fitting in had learned something far more important: how to stand out with grace, dignity, and unshakable courage. And in teaching her classmates about bravery, she had discovered her own.